Ooh.
Ho, ho, ho.
It's the wrong time of the year for that.
Time of the year.
Valentine's Santa.
I am the Valentine's Santa. Love, love, love.
That's the Valentine's Dracula.
You're listening to the Janchi Show, hosted by 3 Korean American adoptees diving headfirst into what it means to be adopted, Korean American, and more. And now, here's your hosts, Nathan, Patrick, and KJ.
Welcome back to the Janchi Show. It is us, KJ, Nathan, Patrick, present again, coming into your ear holes through earpods or
Present and accounted for.
Stereo speakers. Fellas, how are you doing?
Dude, you got me at ear holes. I was like, why does that sound like dirty? I don't know.
Interesting.
I'm doing pretty good. When is this coming out?
I think you'll be on
This
baby
year?
leave. This is
Okay.
coming out in 1, 2, 3 weeks.
Okay. All right. Yeah. 3 weeks removed from today. I'm doing pretty good.
I think
He's deep in the diapers.
I'm deep in diaper land.
Happy Lunar New Year, or maybe not, is coming up. Yeah,
Sure,
Happy
210.
Lunar New Year this weekend.
Happy
to
Lunar
anyone-
New Year.
To anyone listening on time. And if you're not listening on time, well,
That's cool.
thanks for catching up or listening ahead. I don't know how time works.
Maybe they're listening in reverse.
Patrick, why do we call ourselves the Janchi Show?
We call ourselves the Janchi Show because Janchi in Korean means to feast or to banquet. And you don't feast or banquet without celebrating. And we celebrate together by talking about our stories and our experiences as Korean American adoptees, sometimes with a guest, sometimes with ourselves. And at the end of every show, we try a snack or a drink or something that we've never tried before, generally from Korea, sometimes not.
Supposedly. That we've never tried before.
Allegedly. Okay, I should
Supposedly-
allegedly from Korea.
Yes, supposedly
Sometimes
it's something
not.
that we've never had before, supposedly. And also it may or may not be from Korea. And if we have had it before, maybe it's a variation of that thing, or it's the same thing and we forgot.
Or we've forgotten. That's happened before.
In
Yes.
a similar vein of explaining things, Nathan, why are you wearing a Hawaiian shirt when you previously confessed to us there is snow on the ground where you are?
Yes. This weekend was my daughter's 4th birthday, so we had a little celebration each day. Essentially, today was the celebration with my parents that came down. And I don't know, my dad always wears a Hawaiian shirt. Oh, not always. He wears a Hawaiian shirt frequently. And so, and we are currently in the works of planning a family vacation to a warm tropical location. So I was feeling tropical, so I wore the shirt. So.
All right.
Feeling tropical. Tell them how you feel about
yes.
that, Vlad.
That's okay. Patrick called me a dad, or I guess both of you called me the most dad thing ever. And you know what? I'm okay with that.
Take
I
it.
mean,
you got 3
are a
kids?
dad. Yeah. Vlad.
I own it.
What is Vlad? How's Vlad feeling?
I mean, he just took a big old poop. I can't smell it, but it's over there. I saw him do it. I can see the litter box from here.
Get
right.
used to the poop.
And I don't know what he wants. Just making noise.
Oh, that's the worst. Yeah. So it's not children in the background. It's Vlad.
No, that's Vlad. That's the child we've always had. He's a teenager, so he, is just being a teen.
Aren't
Emo.
cats born as teenagers?
Is that how that works?
I'm pretty sure. I think they're teenagers till they die.
It's 7 year, I think, is what the average was. 1 year human, 7 years cat life.
No, that's dogs.
It's similar, I thought.
Yeah, I don't know.
You hear him?
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Oh yeah,
It's
he's
really
in the
throwing me
background of
off.
one of my conversation piece episodes. It's right at the end, so it's not bad. But I'm like, bro, shut up.
It's
doesn't.
really thrown me off. Okay, well, so today it's just the 3 of us, and we are
Just
banking
the 3 of us.
banking episodes because Patrick is going to be gone, and we don't want things to be too interrupted, and also give Patrick time to be a new dad. But I was thinking about the Janchi Show and other platforms like it, and the idea of storytelling. And I was struck by, so I've started listening to this new book. It's called When Religion Hurts, and it's by a therapist, PhD, very intelligent author. But she opens the book kind of talking through her story, some of the big parts of her story with regards to religious trauma. And she ends the story by saying, I could explain more, but for the purposes of this book, I'd rather focus more on the healing than on the story. And I think that she says, and I'm paraphrasing here, we live in such a voyeuristic culture of like telling stories that like sometimes you have to like tell your story in a way that other people can be like, oh yeah, now I know for sure that this is what you went through and how horrible is that, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And then that somehow that gives you the ability to speak into whatever it is you're about to speak into, or something like that. And it just got me thinking about us, and we're like, what are we doing here? Are we doing a bad thing? Do we think is it
Are
What
we
are we
talking
doing?
too much?
well, it was just
What
like,
are we
should we be putting our stories out there in the way that we are? Is there a better way to talk about, and not the three of us particularly, because I think we have moved on and we really do focus on our growth as people and as adoptees, but with our guests and those kinds of things, obviously storytelling is important. It's an important part of our adoptee culture. And is there a way that maybe we're perpetuating something that is less than ideal, or is our community still in its current iteration still in that like, well, we still need to find our storytelling ability first?
And just to make sure I'm clear on the question, you're talking about specifically the community, like the adoptee community.
Yeah, I mean, and as much
not
as
like just individually adoptees or just storytelling in general, but kind of specifically adoptees as a community telling their stories.
Yeah, and I guess specifically just to even narrow it down more is my experience with like the Korean/Asian adoptee community has often been dominated by some version of like, oh man, I met up with these people and we started trading stories about our adoption or growing up and all that kind of stuff. And it was just like, I never thought, whatever. So like a common term is trauma bonding, but I'm also thinking more specifically about the people who do storytelling out loud, whether it's platforms like podcasts, like Adapted, like the Janchi Show, like any of those kinds of things, whether it's bloggers, whether it's social media content creators, those kinds of things. If you're telling your story out loud, do we propagate a voyeur or perpetuate a voyeuristic culture in a way that maybe isn't super helpful to adoptees, while even though it's helping adoptees feel seen?
I think it's a good question. I don't know. I think storytelling in this particular way, or just storytelling in general in any public sphere, naturally is voyeuristic. I don't think that there's any way you can get around that. I think the question really is, and when you asked the question originally, I was thinking about, well, my initial thought was like, well, I don't know if there's like better ways. There's probably different ways, because I think it's maybe not the means of telling the story, but the story itself, and like how you talk about your own story, or how you talk about stories situated within the larger community and the fabric of said community. I think that one way that we can perpetuate harmful tropes or harmful attitudes about our community is when we situate one experience, our own experience, or one type of experience, i.e., positive or negative or whatever it might be, as the end all be all of experiences. And that we talk about it in absolute terms, as in, this is the way it is. And if you don't talk about it this way, or if you don't utilize your platform in a specific way that informs and amplifies this specific narrative, then you're doing it wrong. I think that is very harmful. And I think that goes to whether it be wholly positive stuff or wholly negative stuff, or even if you're operating in the gray space, like not constantly or consistently taking a look and taking a step back at what you're doing and how you're doing it and the stories that you're telling. If you are telling multiple people's stories or trying to amplify and give platform to multiple people, I think that's the responsibility that I've kind of come to see from this, like doing this show, You know, like it's like a real privilege to be able to do that. And I think you have to take that into account and be aware that at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to be exhaustive of everybody's experience and story. And you're not going to be able to truly, fully represent every aspect or experience that comes with being adopted.
Yeah,
and so,
totally agree.
Yeah, I don't know that it's. I don't think that we're doing it wrong. I don't think anybody's doing it wrong. Even people that I disagree with. I think it's great. I think they all deserve to exist, but I think, and they should if you want to do it. But I think it becomes problematic when we start to perpetuate singular narratives at the expense of other people, and we start doing the work of invalidation when that already happens to us from external forces.
No, I think you're completely right on that. The invalidation part, and delivering your story as the only story or the correct story, that I think is definitely harmful. And I have heard that from some people, invalidating other stories. And I've always felt so just, turned off after that kind of a connection where I'm like, well, I mean, after the 3 years that we've been doing this, we've heard so many different stories. Some stories we, relate to and totally resonate with like what they're saying. And other times it's like, no, that's not really how we, maybe view something or a particular situation, but we never say, stop, that's wrong.
Right.
I mean, we're always open to understanding the different views. And I think that's what, if you look at other things, not just storytelling, look at politics, look at, anything that people can disagree on. A lot of times when you're closed-minded on a subject, it's harmful. And it causes a divide. And there is divide within the adoptee community. We've seen it, and I think eventually, hopefully, people come around to, correcting their mistakes and going, oh, wait, maybe I should listen to this side because even though it's not what happened to me or what I think should happen, I need to listen to it and it's valid. And I've been seeing more and more of that, and that's why I think our storytelling is important, is because it does provide more options of different types of stories out there when we hear it from other people. And I think that hearing those options and those stories creates that open-mindedness. At least that's, for me, it does.
Yeah, I definitely think we try to do that. So we're not perfect, for sure. I just want to put that out there.
Okay.
But I think we try.
Speak for yourself, bro.
Okay.
No, I'm not out here trying to say anyone is wrong or anything. I am actually, it's more the voyeurism that was the interesting word to me in that, in like the I don't know, just in the idea of crafting a story, you have to have your character. You don't have to, I guess, but like common trope of storytelling is like your character, your hero goes through like a dark night of the soul, has to face some type of hardship, whatever. And there's this thing in memoirs, in the books that I feel like my wife tells me she's reading, in, I think also just in my own examination of ableism, is like, oh yeah, like holding up, putting on a pedestal a person who goes through like a Helen Keller, like who goes through a horrible thing, or anyone who survives a genocide, or anyone who survives, sexual assault, or other types of like kind of big T traumatic things. And but it's the voyeurism that is interesting to me. And I know that like people who come on our show, we capture them at a specific moment in time, and they often will tell the story of their life through the lens of who they are at that time. It's just like, I don't know, it's just interesting to me to think about like, oh yeah, maybe that's I don't know, like, it's good for us, and maybe it's less than helpful to the broader non-adoptee space or adoptee adjacent space of, maybe it diversifies the narrative, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. It was just an interesting kind of thought. And I was just like, I think what for maybe broad American culture is voyeurism, is for adoptee culture is just like, we just, need to be seen. It's nice to hear these stories because, as we've experienced on the show, some stories are like, oh, we know these beats, we recognize this, this, that, and the other. And sometimes someone will tell their story and we're like, we have no idea what you've experienced. Please tell us more. And that's so fascinating, and so just like, so it is just kind of interesting. And we do have a number of people come on the show who say, I feel like my stories, I've listened to a lot of your interviews and my story is different. I want to add something to that pie, which I love. I think it is so good. It's just kind of interesting thing to think about.
What part of it do you think is or could maybe potentially be not helpful to non-adopted or adoptee adjacent spaces from however it is that we do our storytelling or just storytelling in general?
I think that there's still I'm still really caught up in the idea that for many adoptees, the language that is used to describe their life story at least begins with the original mythology of their adoption, which is handed down to us by those who adopted, right? And so I think that maybe it's that's not helpful because it can kind of, if you're not particular about it, maybe your story grows out of
right. Okay, so for other people who are hearing, they are situating your story and your origin point here.
Well, even we took the intentional approach to say, we want to say, tell us your story. We don't want you to say, tell us your adoption story, whatever, because we think that you are more than just adopted and we're curious about your adoption. We think that you are your whole person and we want, all these kinds of things. We try to help subtly, or maybe not so subtly, guide an adoptee into their own agency around telling their story. And even while doing that, for many of us, I'm not sure that we have developed the ability to start with our own language. We haven't, or maybe it's impossible to do, reclaimed or rewritten the narrative of our adoption in a way that centers us, because it so often is it is a thing that happened to us. So maybe it's impossible. I don't know. It's just interesting to reimagine, to rethink how you would tell your adoption story wholly from your own perspective in active present tense voice, as opposed to I was adopted from South Korea at 6.5 months old, and then I moved to Dallas, Texas, and then my whatever that kind of thing. It just always starts generally with this is just quote unquote the facts, but yeah.
Well, I think to your point that of language, I think we are really getting to this area now where adoptees are actually developing the language, which I'm so big on using the adoptee consciousness model's version of what it means to come to consciousness, essentially, as opposed to coming out of the fog, only because that is the difference between adoptee created and centered language versus adoptive parent created but adoptee centered language. They created that term to center the adoptee experience of coming to consciousness, but it wasn't an adoptee that created.
I think it's big too, because the idea of coming to consciousness is not a one size fits all. It's not everyone knows the fog that we're talking about.
Right.
It's everyone knows what it means to become conscious. Is you become conscious and then you have a whole 80 plus years of development into growing into your identity and who you are. It allows for much more complexity and assumes a lot less about where you came from.
Well, and I think that's
really
why
thing.
Yeah, and I think it's why I personally, when I think about, how do we rewrite and retell our stories through this language, I think it gives us that opportunity to, because instead of going just through the factual beats of it, we can tell our story from this idea of status quo to rupture to dissonance to forgiveness and activism. And I'm blanking on the fourth stage that comes right before that one and is after dissonance. But and then again, to your point of we have 80 more years. We came to consciousness. We escaped the status quo and we went through kind of these 5 stages at a really early age, and we have more time to kind of fill out and tell our story through this lens. It shrinks that amount of time that you stay in the status quo to where you can spend more time like really understanding what it means to hold this identity or be a part of this community or identify it with it however you want to. And I think that, man, what was I going to say? I think that, I don't know. I think the model itself, because it's been created by a cohort of adoptees in academia to help us really understand this experience from like that level, like it allows us to now tell our stories in a different way that maybe can transcend this voyeuristic idea of what it means to tell our stories for people outside of the experience. Instead of just going through the factual beats of, oh, I was adopted, the model serves as a way to tell your story how you want to tell it, in adoption as a part of it. Oh, I remember what I was going to say, because I had a conversation the other day with someone and we were talking about their story, and I kept thinking to myself, man, I really feel like in my questioning, like the questions I came up for this interview, I'm boxing you into this like adoptee thing is all of your identity. Yes. And I was like, I didn't feel very good about that, even though it was like a big part of it. Like, that's not the only thing that you are. And I brought up on my social media the other day the adoptee identity and why I identify as that. But the importance of recognizing that not everybody identifies as like an adoptee, like, and how that affects your story and how that plays into it, is up to you. And it's informed and influenced by all these different things. And at the end of the day, none of us are just adoptees. We're just adopted or whatever, however you want to describe yourself in relation to this experience. We are much, much more than that. And I think the model allows us to tell the story in a different way that centers us as adoptees, but doesn't make us, I don't know, it doesn't have to always be like, oh, this is all that I am. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's like how it's like playing out in my head to get away from the idea of how do we tell but how do we tell our stories differently for these other audiences that's, again, not just factually based. I was adopted, then this happened, it was terrible, or it was good, and then this happened, and now I found other people who are adopted, and it doesn't just always come back to adoption, adopted, adoptee.
Well, I feel that changes based on the audience that you're telling your story to as well. I always feel like when I talk about my adoption story that it changes. It's not always the same based on maybe just what I've learned over the last week, or maybe I came to realization that something was different, or I learned something new, from my biological family or something like that. So I feel like it can always change, and it's never just one story. And it's like adapting and changing with the people that I'm telling it to, who I may have already told something to, and I just wanted to fill in some extra information.
Yeah, no, I think that's what I'm talking about, though, Nathan, is maybe, and Patrick, you talking and explaining some of that, like, has really kind of helped unlock this. Because I mean, I literally had this thought an hour before we started recording, so it's not very mature at all. But I think it's the idea of maybe our show, because we want it to be a platform that amplifies adoptee voices, and adoptee voices, the audience of an adoptee speaking up is so often a non-adopted person, like someone that's like either not related to the adoption triangle or is like a part of the adoption triangle that is not an adoptee. And so it, like, I feel like, and I think the thing that stuck out to me around the idea of voyeurism is maybe we are telling our stories in a way that, for better or for worse, whatever narrative we're fighting against, whether, I guess broad strokes, whether like adoption is bad and you should stop it because I had a super traumatic experience, or my adoption was great and I'm so happy and whatever, and maybe consider stop, whatever, wherever you land on that spectrum, like maybe the way that we tell our stories and even the conceit of shows like ours or platforms and other mediums like ours is like we play into the voyeurism too much. We try to tell our story in a way that like gives us street cred for the audiences that we hope might be listening, so that we can advocate for change or something like that. I don't know. And I think that it leads me into a topic that's been on our board for a long time around the idea of documentary versus fictional narratives. Because I wonder, like documentaries, I just have these notes. Maybe they're my own thoughts. Maybe they're from somewhere else and they're not my own thoughts. But documentaries tell stories as they are. They help people feel seen. And we, as a community, for maybe the large part, still need to feel seen. And maybe that's not even like maybe that's not like a community thing so much as it is like the sum of its parts thing. Like all of us individually still feel that need to be seen on a just a high percentage level, even if the adoptee community might be larger within itself. Be like, no, we see each other, and that's enough. So that's like the idea of like we still need to feel seen. Documentaries tell the story as they are. In some ways, you could argue that our show is documentary-esque, memoir-esque. Whereas fictional narratives tell stories as they could be. They help people dream. And I think that like that's maybe where we are starting to see some growth, have seen some continued growth, but are still really falling shy in terms of changing the narrative by changing the target audience, by changing the medium. We break out of this kind of idea of voyeurism. We break out of this idea of this is how we always tell our stories. And we can talk about what are we dreaming about? What are we aspiring towards? What are we hoping for? All of that kind of stuff. Like, what do adoptees dream about in a way that helps push the narrative forward, maybe just from a different direction or from a different angle?
Patrick is dreaming about wearing my Hawaiian shirt as he becomes a dad.
False. That's a good question. I think that from a documentary standpoint and like telling our stories how they are, I think, well, okay, I want to go back to what you said about maybe at the individual level, we all still want to be seen, but as a community, we feel like we see each other. Unfortunately, I don't know that that's true. I think that we can trick ourselves into believing that it is, but there are certain things happening right now that leads me to believe that it is difficult for us to do so.
Well, it also depends on like the scope of the community, but I think
very true.
It just like I think there is more chance of like feeling seen in an adoptee space that can meet that need, even while individually many of us might still feel the need to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been talking about this for a while regarding the fictional narrative. Like, we can always use more documentaries, more real life tellings, because I think that those types of things bolster what we can tell from a fictional narrative standpoint and perspective. Like, having more of those, it's like you tell a what we're dreaming about. Like, you tell this fictional tale of that includes adoptee or adoption related issues like sense of belonging or searching, and work that in. And I think when you look at how this was produced or written and you realize, oh, this is why this exists and goes that way, you can then go back to the documentary-esque things that exist out there and use that to then bolster whatever it is that you want to learn or that you start to learn because you watch this said fictional narrative. I think that we are starting to see it a little bit. I just had Sarah Meyer on the show. They're a Korean adoptee. They're a comic book artist and writer, and they put out a graphic novel called Monstrous, a transracial adoption story. And at the end of the day, it probably is more autobiographical or memoir-esque because it is kind of it's their story, but it is presented in a way that, like, if it didn't have the subtitle of or the subheading of a transracial adoption story and you just read it as Monstrous, and then you were just reading this and you didn't realize, oh, this is based on a real person's story, you could take it as fictional. Like, you could be like, oh, they just made this up, and whatever the case is. And for me, I feel like this particular work blurs the line of narrative and documentary storytelling in a way that I think we really need and are severely lacking right now, because it depicts this experience in such a way that I feel like is so visceral. And I feel like you don't have to be an adoptee to understand how external forces can build up this monster inside of you, and it gets depicted in a really visceral and visual way. It's really incredible. Honestly, I've said it a couple times, but like one of the best depictions of that experience that I think I've ever seen, narrative or fictional or documentary. And I think that if we can get to it, I don't know. It's just, I like the idea of being able to dream, like for the fictional narrative to like capture those dream moments and what we want to see. My biggest concern, honestly, comes back to will the contingent of the community who does not feel seen by said fictional narrative that comes out do things that invalidate said people, or invalidate the people who do feel seen by it? And then we find ourselves in not the same, but similarly a Blue Bayou scenario where, and taking the appropriation part out of it, the appropriation of a story out of it, where because we're so desperate to have this representation and validation that is exhaustive, that covers all the bases, that gets it right and is 100% perfect. Like, when it's not that, we go to work on each other and it's not good. And I think at the end of the day, we need the fictional because that's what's going to change push the narrative forward, especially with audiences outside of our community. And if we are fighting with each other over the way this is being depicted and we're invalidating each other because we don't like that you're either supporting it or that this person wrote it and had this involvement in it, and it's like, oh, well, their experience doesn't match up with mine. Like, we put ourselves in this box and it sucks. And I'm probably getting away from the original question here, but that's just, I feel like recent things have been really weighing heavily on my mind when it comes to the community aspect. And when it comes to these fictional versus documentary narratives, it's like we need them both and they both exist and it's all valid. And at the end of the day, when you think about how we change an intangible narrative 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line, 50 years down the line, those fictional things are what's going to help move it forward more so than the documentary. But the documentary being there is going to help bolster what people want to come and learn about after having seen that fictional narrative. So all that to say, a whole bunch of stuff. We need both of those things, and like they serve each other. And if you want to create it, I think you should have the opportunity to do so. And I would love to see other people come out and support you and make that happen. I mean, do the things that I'm going to say make sense?
Yeah. No, I think I think it does.
I realize it's a bunch of different thoughts.
Well, this is what we get when we try to bank episodes. Is we get a real heady conversation.
Well, because I'm also in the space now, realizing that this is also a conversation that's coming out 3 weeks later. You know what I mean? And it's just like, how do I capture this moment in time? But
well, I think our listeners are smart enough to realize that we're playing with the timeline.
Sure.
The sacred branch has been destroyed. Yeah. And I just watched Loki, so I'm like very up on TVA stuff. But yeah, no, it's just, and I think this is an evergreen conversation in that we can always be pushing for more. We can always be pushing for better. In the case of like a Blue Bayou situation, we can celebrate the win and push for more. And in the case of Joyride, we can celebrate a win and push for more. Like in the case of really any documentary, and not that documentaries are perfect. Obviously, they all come in like with their own points of view and their own biases and their own producers and their own like financial backers and all that kind of stuff, right? So like nothing is ever clean and straightforward and easy. And that I think is what we run up against, right? Because Patrick, everything that you were saying is like, yes, we need more, all of it. And it's like, yeah, but doesn't that also just go back into feeding the voyeurism of, and maybe voyeurism is inescapable for an American citizen. Maybe that is just that's the inescapable monster of the world that we live in right now, is we're just like, oh wow, like kind of the win maybe of DEI is like, oh, look at all these stories to explore and think about, but then you're like, but I don't have to live with that, and now I'm just like thinking, I don't know, all that kind of stuff, and it becomes like too abstract, and then it's a weird space. It's a weird time. I was just so fascinated with the idea of, I've never heard it called out as voyeurism, as the culture being voyeurism, and yet there is something, and specifically to get back to the original point of a traumatic story and the voyeurism of it. There's something that I feel in the culture of fiction broadly, but maybe other culture, books and media and whatnot, where there's something is shifting towards this more like heightened state of voyeurism. And so authors are like, or directors, writers are trying to be like, oh yeah, well, we gotta, if we play into this, it sells better. And then that, because it's selling better, then we, like that kind of thing. So it's just that. It was just like a really poignant observation about the culture right now, broadly in 2024 in America, that I was like, oh, this is interesting. I was curious about that, and then I was like, yeah, what are we doing in that space? Are we also leaning into that? Should we be leaning into that? Is that good thing, bad thing?
Are you trying to get us to start a TikTok?
That kind of thing.
I'm still not going to do it.
Nope.
Okay, I think I misunderstood originally what you were talking about when it came to the voyeurism.
Couldn't even explain what I was talking about.
It makes total sense now, because I think I get what you're saying. Like, people today, like, we play into it, like you just said.
Yeah.
Like, we play to that nature, that idea that, oh, we want to consume other people's stories to feed or sate whatever internal thing, even if we call it, even if it's under the guise of, oh, I'm represented or I'm seen or validated in that way. Or for other people who just, I don't want to say get off on seeing other, like, just consuming other people's stories. I would say that I don't think that we do play into that. I think that if we do, it's unintentional, because we've never had a conversation about, like, how should we tailor a story? The biggest change maybe that was made, and I think it actually moves away from that, was when we changed the question from tell us your adoption story to just tell us your story. I think it like gives the guest the option to explore and share their story and start the conversation wherever they want. It doesn't necessarily have to be adoption. Maybe it goes with the show and the topic of the show. Like, okay, I'm going to talk about adoption.
The subtext is there.
Right. But I don't think that we like play into it. And I think that that's what I've learned through doing this show and doing other shows now, is like, a lot of people, for better or for worse, honestly, and just in general in society, not just adoptees, but like, it's a privilege to know anything about anybody else and to hear somebody tell you their story and know in whatever terms that they share it with you as. And we take that for granted every single day. And I think that's the voyeuristic nature of it. Like, we just sit and consume and we think that that's okay. And especially if we don't reciprocate, or especially if we're doing it because, like, again, like, it feeds something.
Not even that it's okay, just that it's normal. It just is.
Right,
like,
exactly.
There is no qualifier.
Exactly.
It just is.
100%. And I think if we could understand and recognize, oh, this is a privilege for me to be the receiver of said person's story. It plays into like mindfulness. It plays into all of like, a bunch of different concepts of just the idea of being present in somebody's thing and not thinking, like, listening to somebody's story and being like, oh, I got something to say, respond to this as, or whatever it is. But we're just like, we're just consumers. Like, we take, and like you said, it's normal now. It's like been internalized as a society to a point that it's just like, this is what we do. We just absorb. And I don't think that it's inescapable, but I do think it is close enough to a singularity where it's really difficult to get away from it, even like just as an individual, and like, you have to constantly be aware, oh, am I operating in this way? Like, am I just consuming this person's story for X, Y, or Z reason? And yeah.
Nathan, thoughts?
I just listen to you guys talk.
Nathan's like, let's go to the food now. I'm going to do the food.
No, I agree with everything you guys said. I mean, I also believe
I concur.
I concur with everything, and I understand where you're coming from, KJ. The first thing that I started thinking of when you started talking about the whole subject was, are you talking about like performative? Like, are we trying to be too much to just, to provide content for the voyeurism's voyeuristic people out there. Is that also something?
Well,
that
I mean, I think
of?
that's like the snake eating its tail, right? Is late stage capitalism is we're just up in constant consumerism. And I personally have run into this. I no longer have anything to stream. All the things that I've binged, I'm caught up on. Maybe they're releasing weekly. And so I have like days where I'm like, I don't have a new video game. I don't have like a book. I mean, I've just started a new book. So that's a little, but I'm like, I don't have a new video game. I don't have like a TV show or anything that I'm watching, or that, like I'm rewatching something with Sarah, but like whatever, like I was just like, I don't know. There's so much time where so then I'm like, well, what do I do with myself? Better myself? No, it's just, and I think that's such a unique space. But yeah, I think it is just we are consumers, and I don't know. There's just a lot, and I think lots of people will go through life and not think about this. And I think that we, as podcast hosts, as people who are trying to do a thing for a community, we need to do our part to be a little bit more intentional and think about these things. And part of our mission is with the Janchi Show is to explore our stories as adoptees and as people and as we grow and change. And so we are creating content and doing this out loud for the benefit of other people. But I think it is, it's just like, we should just be a little bit more intentional and think about it. I don't think that we're doing anything wrong. I've never really thought about that, but it's more just like, I've never really thought to question it either. And I think that was really the whole impetus for today's discussion.
Yeah, I like it. And I think it's really hard. And I'm really thinking about like the fictional aspect of it. And I'm like, I'd really love to hear some filmmakers answer this question, or at least discuss it in the way, and like, hear their process of like, how do we deal with this? Or do we even think about it? Because I think it's just like, we're trying to option our shit and get paid, and make money and live in our life. Yeah. So it's like, so it's like, very interesting. Good conversation. Good question. Yeah. Sorry I talk so much.
No, it's you know what? It is what it is.
A lot of thoughts.
It's also like, this is what happens when I come up with an idea with not a lot of prep time. Is I think you and I think quicker, faster. Patrick, you and I think quicker out loud, and Nathan, you're like, let me get back to you in a couple of days. I'm like, but we're recording right now.
I agree.
I'm happy to sit here and just nod. Honestly, you guys,
it's great.
No one can see me nodding, but I was agreeing. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's just learning. Yeah. I mean, I think well when I'm just speaking out loud, which is why I'm good at by myself alone in my home. I can just talk and I'll be like, oh, just talk that makes sense.
talk to himself in the mirror.
Siri, press record.
Oh.
Well,
we can do food now.
Let's do it.
Welcome back to the Janchi Show. It is time to snack.
Well, there goes the remaining parts of my eardrum.
Yeah, that was good. I was just throwing in some mukbang.
You need to hold up a little sign that says, "I'm going to crinkle into the microphone," so I can turn the volume down.
Crinkle into microphone. Yeah.
Well, actually, I blame myself for not realizing that was going to.
I was going to do something. Come on, you know me by now.
That's true. I do.
It's always different. Yeah. So today we are having a chip, and I'll be honest. The first time I saw this chip, I had no clue what it said. It says Basak chip, but at first I thought it said basilisk. And I was like, "What's it? Snake chips? What is this?"
Snake chips.
Yeah, and then it said upcycled on it, but it I don't know, it's got a whole bunch of different things on the front that I have not translated yet. So
okay, my favorite thing, this already is getting 5 chips for me, because the little mascot on the back is holding a sign that says "For Us and Earth," and I'm almost positive that he just got done smoking some weed, because he looks high as hell.
He looks higher than Snoopy.
He's like,
yeah.
Hey, for us
like
it
kind of looks like the South Park Towley.
Oh yeah, Towley.
Yeah, he does. What is it though? Is it a sponge? No, it's a box.
It looks like a little box. It looks like a box of cigarettes.
Yeah.
Hey, if someone wants to call in and explain what upcycled means to
It's true.
us three
I don't
idiots, that would be
know
great.
that's-
972-677-8867.
Yeah, that's
La Palma.
that's something new. It also gives some sort of an instruction below it. Step 1, step 2, step 3, and I have no clue what it's telling.
I think
us
you
to do
use
with
it
these
as like an
chips.
ingredient in something else.
Oh, you could put
Or you,
it
like, bake it or something?
on ramen, maybe. You could turn it into a sushi.
Okay,
I don't
what does it
really
say?
know.
I don't know. I took off the. I already opened it.
I
and
don't
took
Oh
off
no,
the
it's the
speaker.
bottom right.
Oh,
It's
that
very
business?
confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like instructions.
I do not know.
Oh hey, this
I don't
expires on my birthday.
Legit, no idea.
There you go.
All right,
Happy
so it's.
birthday.
I just saw the first ingredient is rice grits and then rice. So interesting. So we're in
This
for a
is
rice
made
chip.
by a CJ. So
Thanks, CJ.
all right, it looks like a popcorner to me. That's the first.
Yeah,
It
thing I think.
smells
looks
like
a
cardboard.
popcorner.
I don't know
That's
if you
pretty
smelled
similar.
it. But it
It's
smells like
multicolored.
cardboard.
It's not just white. It's actually white and like brown, and it's a triangle.
Oh, mine's a circle.
yeah. Sometimes it's a triangle, sometimes it's a circle.
Oh, what? Well, they got both in there.
It feels like
Man, this is
it looks
all
like
kinds
communion.
of geometry going on.
Body of Christ.
It does.
In remembrance of me.
And also with you.
I don't remember how the rest of the song goes.
Wow.
And also with you.
Okay, so the first thing I noticed about these triangle and round chips is that they're concave.
What?
It's like got a lip on it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean. Mhm.
It's almost like a dip.
Yeah, you could
Dip
use
chip.
it as a dip chip or something.
Like if a Doritos had like a rim or like an edge on it.
Man, every time I eat this round one, now that's all I'm thinking about is communion. Is
Yeah.
it totally almost
definitely
tastes like it? It's
a wafer.
saltier, but I don't know.
Was I just
It's not
talking about
bad.
that on this show? How I went to oh no, it was with Leah. I went to a Catholic grade school, and that was one of the things that made me feel othered because
Oh, yeah, because you couldn't.
yeah, I
take
couldn't
communion.
go up and take
But you
communion
had to
on
go
Friday
up there
mass.
and
No,
cross your.
No, I had to sit in the pew and just watch
Oh, I
everybody do it.
Oh,
which
no,
was,
yeah.
which was way worse.
Wow.
We've talked about it, yeah, because I was
Okay.
like, you could have just gone up in the line, but then cross yourself,
No, they made me feel like I couldn't go up in the line.
throwing up the X. And that's because you weren't in on the secret club. So that's your
Yeah.
fault.
I know. And I was like, Mom, let's be Catholic. And they're like, no.
All right.
And I was like, okay. Yeah, I was like, okay.
Well,
These are growing on me. TBH.
it's really
I didn't
not
like
bad.
I didn't like the first one. Liking now this
This
10th
is like
one.
opposite of all the other snacks we've had this year so far.
That's true.
Wow.
No, the chocolate one was baller from the.
Oh,
True.
yeah.
Chocolate was great.
Yep.
That was from the start.
This is
the Ghana
actually
chocolate.
it's not like heavy either.
No.
It almost
It's like
feels
a
lighter
popcorner.
than popcorn to me.
It's like a popcorner. It is. Yeah.
But it's less crunchy maybe than a popcorner, just by a
Yeah.
little bit.
Maybe.
Like it's
Not
like
getting stuck in my
it's like
teeth.
slightly softer than a popcorner.
Yeah.
Not as popcorny. Yeah.
I mean, it's probably because it's made with rice and not popcorn.
I thought you were trying to do.
I was
I'm
not making
laughing.
a joke on that.
I don't believe you for 1 second. You just smiled into the camera, and then you looked away quickly when you
He-
saw we weren't looking. I heard you though.
Winked
Mhm.
at the camera.
Hmm.
Yeah, these are good.
Yeah, these are good.
One pouch is 210 calories.
Yeah, I like it's.
Not
I
bad.
feel like it's got the perfect amount of salt that keeps me going back too, and sugar. You can taste the sugar in it too.
It does
Yeah.
have.
I feel like I'm
interesting.
gonna taste that sunflower oil.
No.
Oh, excuse me. The sunflower oil.
Sunflower.
Yeah, sunflower oil.
Flour.
I had to go.
Nice.
I'm like, wait, is that a D? It was. I was not mistaken.
All right, ratings.
I'm giving this a 5.
Okay.
I really like it. I don't like that it smells like cardboard, but everything else I enjoy.
You're right. I don't like the smell, but tastes.
You gotta
great.
smell an
anything.
individual one.
Hmm.
Don't it smell like cardboard?
I can't smell anything.
No,
You sick?
I smell more out of the bag.
Still getting over the sickness.
I'll give it a. I'm gonna give it a 4.5. So it's a good solid chip. I'm curious because this says original. Now I'm curious as what other flavors do they have? Do they have cheese? Do they have
Ooh,
you know,
chocolate.
Cool Ranch?
Bro,
Yeah, I don't know about the chocolate part.
Yeah, I could do
want
a cheddar one
Dorito.
of these.
Oh.
No. This does not remind me of Doritos. I don't know why you keep saying that.
No, I'm just saying it's like when you said chocolate, it made me think of like, oh yeah, just give me like a chocolate Dorito.
I just like chocolate and everything.
All right.
I like chocolate covered popcorn. Pretty good.
The white cheddar popcorners. I love those, so that I could see that as this.
Yeah, white cheddar.
Sure.
Yep. Really, any popcorn or flavor. You can get like you'll ever have like Flex chips? Maybe not. There's a buffalo ranch flavor.
I've had prison
like
chips.
What?
No further questions.
Oh, that's a whole nother. The whole shebang. It's a chip that's a chip that tastes like everything. These chips you could only get in prison.
Interesting.
It's the whole thing.
Yeah,
YouTube it.
I'm gonna give it a 4.5. I think original flavor is really strong, and the only thing that prevents it from being a 5 is I'm curious about another flavor.
Your own curiosity prevents it from going.
Well, I think if there's another flavor of this, it probably is the
That's a good point.
It's a little
the white cheddar. I'm interested in the white cheddar.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Like I feel like I definitely need a drink right now.
Mozzarella. Mozzarella.
So yeah,
Nacho Cool Ranch.
2 back-to-back good snacks. I appreciate it, Nathan.
Yeah, you're welcome. And make sure you upcycle whatever that is. I don't know.
I'm pissed.
or maybe it's been upcycled. I don't know. I don't know how upcycling works.
Me either. I don't think it does.
Maybe
Actually, I
that's why it
know
tastes
that
like
it
cardboard.
does. I take that back. I know
Maybe
that
it's
recycling
recycled
does. I was
cardboard.
making
There's a
a
little
joke.
bit of cardboard in the chip.
That's true.
Yeah.
It could be.
Maybe. Anyways, that is it for our show. You can, gosh, I don't know how to sign off.
There's so many things to talk about.
You can find us, find the show on social media platforms at Janchi Show. You can go to Facebook if you want to go to a Facebook group instead of just hanging out with us on Instagram. Nathan is there, and also me sometimes. Mostly Nathan. Is
Mainly me.
if you want to call in, again, I said this earlier, but call in and explain to us what upcycled is. That would be great. The number is 972-677-8867. Call in, ask us a question, explain upcycled to us, whatever you want to do, really. It's your voicemail box, and we'll just play it probably unless it's bad. You can leave us a rating or a review on any platform that allows you to do that. It really helps our show's discoverability, and other people trust us basically when they stumble upon it. You can go to the website, janchishow.com/support to figure out other ways to support the show. Oh yeah, in the email, janchishow@gmail.com. Wow.
Got it.
Future KJ is going to have a nightmare editing this part of the episode.
It'll be great.
Is that it?
I think that is it. 6 things.
6 things in a movie. You can find me at KJ Roelke wherever I want to be found on the internet.
Do you know Basak in Turkish means wheat?
That makes sense.
Yeah, but it's a
Does
rice
it?
chip. It's a rice chip.
Yeah, because there's wheat on here.
But in Turkish, it means wheat. There's no wheat in here. Oh, wait, it does say contains wheat.
Nathan, do you know that we're doing sign-offs right now?
Sure, I do, but I just wanted to throw that one out there because.
Did you know?
Oh, yes. You can find me and Nowak on Instagram, and as you heard, Nathan Nowak on Facebook.
And you can find me at Patrick in the World wherever I want to be found, or over on my other show, Conversation Piece with Patrick Armstrong. It's a show about the missing pieces of the conversations we're already having.
Oh, Dip, he's finally plugging his own stuff.
I did.
I did not approve that.
The bigger question is he cross-promoting the Janchi Show on
good
Conversation
point.
Piece? Odds are he's not, because I don't think he ever talks about the Janchi Show.
I talk
Well,
about the
you would
Janchi Show all the time.
Yeah, I was going to say, you'd have to listen to
I
an
don't know.
episode. then,
Every
wouldn't you?
adoptee that I have on, it comes up at least once because I have to reference it for whatever reason.
Yeah,
You should just
that's
bleep out that whole part.
Yeah. I talk about the bleep.
Yeah. I wouldn't even be
Redacted.
mad. I wouldn't even be mad.
Redacted.
Incredible. Well, that's it for our show. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We will see you sometime in the future. We don't know how often episodes are coming out because banking and stuff. And Patrick, if you listen to this while you're chilling with a baby, hope that it helps you fall asleep. And that you've made it this far. Maybe it won't.
It might. Yeah, you might already be sleeping.
But, good luck with the new baby.
Thank you.
Happy Lunar New Year. Say hey, Bokmane Badaseo.
Say hey, Bokmane
That one
Badaseo.
too. Until next time, friends.
Hey, Bokmane
Janchi.
Badaseo.
Heyo. Heyo.